I stepped off voluntarily, dusted my hands, and watched everything burn from the bottom. But I'm getting ahead of myself. See, there are things you learn when you spend 40 years threading pipe in buildings that other people will never set foot inside. You learn that what holds everything together is always hidden. The joints, the welds, the fittings buried behind drywall where nobody thinks to look. You learn that the quiet things are the strongest things. And you learn, God, do you learn that the moment someone starts telling you you're weak, it's because they need you to believe it. My name is Gerald Mack. I'm 67 years old. And tonight, 8 people sat around my dining room table to take everything I have. They brought a lawyer. They brought a notary. They brought a pen. What they didn't bring was a single clue about what they were walking into. Welcome back. Grab your snacks, get comfortable, and remember, every quiet person has a story that would bring a room to silence. Subscribe so you never miss a story. Let me take you back. Not to tonight, we'll get there. But to the man sitting in that chair so you understand who they thought they were dealing with. I was born in Akron, Ohio. Grew up on the east side. In a neighborhood where the houses leaned a little and the porches always needed paint but nobody ever locked their doors. My father was a welder. His father was a welder. I went into the trades the way most boys on our street did. Not because someone told us to dream bigger, but because pipe fitting was honest work, and honest work was the only kind we knew. I joined the Pipefitters Union at 19. Spent the next 41 years crawling through boiler rooms, hanging ductwork in hospital basements at 2 in the morning, threading natural gas lines in buildings so tall you couldn't see the street from the roof. I never complained. I never called in sick unless I physically could not stand. I drove the same Ford F-150 for 14 years, replaced the clutch twice myself in the driveway, and I packed the same Coleman lunchbox every single morning. Turkey on wheat, thermos of black coffee, an apple, every day. My wife, Denise, died when Darren was 6. Pancreatic cancer. Took her in 11 weeks from diagnosis to the funeral. I won't dwell on that because some losses are too deep to narrate. I'll just tell you this. I raised that boy by myself in a 2-bedroom house on a corner lot on Ridgewood Avenue, and I did it without asking anyone for a dime. No mortgage. I paid that house off 9 years early by picking up weekend shifts and living below every means I had. No debt. Not a credit card balance. Not a car payment. Not $1 owed to anyone on this earth. I own that house outright. I own the truck. I own the tools in my garage that still smell like cutting oil and sweat. For the last 11 years, since I retired, I've lived alone in that house. Quiet life. I fix things for the neighbors. I watch the Guardians play on the television Denise picked out the year before she died. I eat dinner at 5:30. I go to bed at 9. I am not a rich man by any definition you'd see on a magazine cover. But I am a man who owns everything he touches, and nobody holds a lien on my name. That distinction matters tonight. Started about 2 years ago. Easter dinner. Darren and Renata came over with the kids. Lily was 7 then, and Marcus was 12. Renata made a ham. I made the greens. We sat at the dining room table like we did every holiday, and for a while it felt normal. Felt like family. I made an offhand comment. Just conversation. I mentioned that I had gone to see a lawyer in Columbus to update my estate documents. A routine thing. Something any man my age should do. I said it the way you'd say you changed the oil in your truck. No drama, no wait, just a fact. Renata's fork stopped moving. I didn't know it yet, but that sentence was the match. By the following week, she was asking questions. Casual ones. Gerald, have you thought about what happens to the house if something happens to you? Gerald, do you have a will that's up to date? Gerald, wouldn't it be easier if Darren had access to your accounts? Just in case? Just in case. 3 words that sound like love but taste like a locksmith picking your front door. I should have looked closer, but I chalked it up to concern. Renata had always been ambitious. She managed a dental office. She drove a leased Audi. She wore watches that cost more than my first car. And I figured she just liked things organized. Controlled. Neat. By the following month, she had opinions. Specific ones. She thought I should sell the house and move into an assisted living community. She thought I should add Darren to my bank accounts. She thought, And this is the one that told me everything. She thought I should consolidate all my assets into one place so they could be properly managed. I filed that away. Over the next year, the visits changed. Darren started coming alone sometimes, without the kids, and he'd walk through the house slowly, opening cabinets, looking at the water heater, checking the foundation. He'd say things like, "Dad, this place is getting to be a lot for one person." Or, "If you ever needed help, Renata and I could handle things." Handle things. There's another phrase that sounds like a hand on your shoulder but feels like a hand in your pocket. And then there were the small tests. Renata would ask me the same question twice in one conversation and watch my face to see if I noticed. She'd bring up something we discussed a week ago and say, "Gerald, you probably don't remember, but..." And I did remember every word, but I let it pass. I let her build whatever story she was building. That's on me. The signs were there. I just wasn't reading them the way I should have been. Or maybe I was reading them and I just didn't want to believe that my own son, the boy I taught to tie his shoes, the boy I walked to school every morning for 6 years, the boy who cried into my chest the night his mother died, was part of it. The last Sunday before tonight, Lily slid a drawing under my door. It was a picture of me and her sitting on the porch, and at the bottom, in purple crayon, she had written, "Grandpa's house is the best place." I taped it to the refrigerator. I didn't know it yet, but that little girl was about to save everything. Tonight, a Tuesday, 7:14 p.m. I had spent the afternoon helping my neighbor Ray fix a water heater. 3 hours on my knees on a concrete basement floor, threading copper fittings and replacing an anode rod that had corroded down to a nub. Good work. Real work. The kind of work that reminds you your hands still know what they're doing. I came home, kicked off my work boots in the hall, and was still wearing my flannel shirt and old Carhartt pants when the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened the front door and there stood Darren. Behind him, Renata. Behind her, 6 more people. They filed in like a procession, Renata's brother-in-law Victor, a woman I'd never seen before carrying a leather portfolio, 2 cousins of Renata's I had met maybe 3 times at holidays, and 4 other people I did not recognize at all. 8 people total. Walking into my home without a phone call, without an invitation, without so much as a, "Is this a good time, Gerald?" Renata had dressed for the occasion. Black blazer, pearl earrings. She looked like she was attending a closing. So did the woman with the portfolio, who turned out to be a notary Renata had brought herself. And the man in the gray suit sitting at the far end of my table. He was a lawyer. Not my lawyer. They sat around my dining room table. My table. The one Denise and I bought at a furniture store in Canton the year after we got married. The one I refinished by hand when the varnish started to crack. 8 people seated around it like they already owned it, like the deed was already signed, like this was just the formality. Renata didn't waste time. She placed a stack of printed documents on the table. Thick, maybe 30 pages, with yellow tabs marking signature lines, and she slid them across the surface toward me. Not handed them. Slid them. The way you'd slide a bill to someone at a restaurant. Then she spoke. Loud enough for every person in that room to hear. "You're not sharp anymore, Gerald." She paused. Let it sit. Then continued. "Everyone here can see it. We're doing this for your own good before you give away everything you have left." 8 people. 8 pairs of eyes on me. The notary had her stamp ready. The lawyer had a second copy of the documents in his briefcase. Renata had uncapped her pen and was already pointing to the first signature line, tapping it twice with her fingernail like I was a child who couldn't find the dotted line. Power of attorney papers, granting Darren, and by extension Renata, full legal authority over my finances, my property, my medical decisions. Everything. I looked at my son. Darren sat to my left, both hands wrapped around his coffee mug, turning it slowly, staring into it like there was something at the bottom worth reading. He did not look up. He did not say one word. My boy. The boy I raised alone. The boy I put through school. The boy I taught to check the oil and change a tire and look a man in the eye when you shake his hand. He sat 3 feet away from me while his wife told a room full of strangers that his father had lost his mind, and he did not open his mouth. That silence was worse than anything Renata said. I want you to understand that the cruelest thing in that room wasn't the accusation. It wasn't the papers. It wasn't the ambush. It was my son's hands on that coffee mug, turning it in a circle, and his eyes that would not meet mine. I didn't react. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam my fist on the table or tell them to get out of my house. I looked at the papers. I looked at the signature line. I looked at Renata's pen, still tapping. And then, from the hallway behind me, I felt a small hand tug my sleeve. Lily, 9 years old. She had slipped away from the back room where they'd told her to stay. She was standing in the shadow of the hallway in her pajamas, the ones with the little strawberries on them, and her eyes were wet. She leaned up on her toes and whispered close to my ear, so quiet only I could hear, "Grandpa, they're coming for your money tonight." 9 years old, and she understood what was happening in that room better than the lawyer, better than the notary, better than every adult sitting at my table. Something in me went completely still. I looked down at Lily. I put my hand on the side of her face, gentle, the way I used to hold Darren's face when he was small and scared of thunder. I nodded once, slowly, just for her. Then I straightened up, turned back to the table and said, in the most ordinary voice I could manage, "Excuse me, I need to use the restroom." Renata barely looked up. She was arranging the pages, fanning them out, making sure every yellow tab was visible. She waved her hand like I was a minor interruption to a meeting she was chairing. "Of course, Gerald. Take your time. Take your time." In my own house, I walked down the hall, closed the bathroom door, locked it. I stood there for a moment in the dark, both hands on the edge of the sink, and I breathed. One breath, two. I could hear them through the walls, murmuring, shuffling papers, someone laughing quietly. They were relaxed. They were confident. In their minds, this was already done. The old pipe fitter in his flannel shirt was going to come back out, sit down, and sign away his life because his daughter-in-law told him to. I took my old cell phone from my shirt pocket, a Samsung flip phone I've had for 6 years. Renata once made a joke about it at Thanksgiving, said it belonged in a museum. I didn't laugh then. I wasn't laughing now. I opened my contacts, scrolled to a name.
Richard Hale.
Attorney. Hale and Merritt, Columbus, Ohio. The same man who helped me establish a private holding trust 11 years ago. The same man who structured every asset I have so that no document in Renata's lawyer's briefcase could touch a single dollar of it. The same man who told me, the day we signed the trust papers, "Gerald, if the day ever comes when someone tries to override your autonomy, you call me." Day or night? It was night. I pressed the green button. He answered on the second ring. "Richard," I said quietly, "it's Gerald Mack. They're here. They brought 8 people and a lawyer. They've got power of attorney papers on my dining room table, and they want me to sign." Silence on his end for 3 seconds. Then, calm as a surgeon, "Don't sign anything. Don't argue. Don't leave. I'm calling Judge Whitmore's clerk right now, and I will be at your door in 90 minutes. Can you hold?" "I've held for 2 years," I said. 90 minutes is nothing. I closed the phone, slid it back into my shirt pocket. I looked at myself in the mirror. Flannel shirt, gray hair, calloused hands. 67 years of living that left marks on the outside but didn't touch the core. I flushed the toilet, for the sound of it, washed my hands, dried them on the towel Denise had picked out 15 years ago, and walked back into the dining room. I sat down. I placed both hands flat on the table. I did not pick up the pen. Renata smiled. She pointed to the signature line again. "All set?" she asked. "Just about," I said. "Let me read through it one more time." I pulled the papers toward me and began reading. Every page, every clause, every line of fine print. Slowly, the way a man reads when he has nowhere to be and everything to protect. Renata's smile thinned. The lawyer checked his watch. Darren's coffee mug made another slow circle in his hands. I had not said a single word about what was already in motion. If you've made it this far, do us one quick favor. Subscribe. A lot of people watch without ever doing it, but it costs you nothing and means everything to us. Thank you genuinely. I read those documents for exactly 47 minutes. Every page, every line. I asked the lawyer 3 questions about specific clauses, questions detailed enough to make him pause and look at Renata before answering. The room grew restless. One of the cousins went to the kitchen for water. The notary checked her phone. Victor leaned back in his chair and yawned. Renata tapped her pen against the table. Faster now. Impatient. Gerald, it's a standard document. Darren is your son. This is simple. Nothing about signing away your autonomy is simple, Renata. She blinked. That was the first thing I'd said all night that didn't sound like compliance. She recovered quickly. She always does, and leaned forward. We're trying to help you. I turned to page 23. At 8:46 p.m., the doorbell rang. Renata looked up. Darren looked up, the first time his eyes had left that coffee mug all evening. The lawyer frowned. Are you expecting someone? Renata asked. I am. I stood up, walked to the front door, opened it. Richard Hale stood on my porch in a charcoal overcoat, briefcase in his left hand, a manila folder in his right. Behind him was a woman I recognized, Karen Voss, a licensed clinical psychologist from Akron whom Richard had contacted on the drive down. And behind her, a man in a navy blazer with a court clerk's badge clipped to his chest. 3 people. My 3 people. Gerald, Richard said, extending his hand. May we come in? Please. They entered my home the way professionals enter a room, quietly, with purpose, with the kind of authority that doesn't need to announce itself. Richard set his briefcase on the side table in the hallway and unbuttoned his overcoat. Karen Voss nodded to me and said nothing. The court clerk stood by the door with a sealed envelope. I led them into the dining room. The look on Renata's face. I will remember it as long as I live. It wasn't fear. Not yet. It was confusion. The special kind of confusion that comes when a script you've rehearsed starts going off the page. Who are these people? She asked. This is my attorney, I said. Richard Hale, Hale and Merritt, Columbus. He's been my counsel for 11 years. Richard placed his briefcase on the table, opened it, and removed 3 documents. He laid them out side by side, neat as blueprints. And this is Dr. Karen Voss, licensed clinical psychologist. She's here to provide an independent cognitive assessment, not one arranged by a family member with a financial interest, but a neutral one. And this gentleman is from the Franklin County Clerk of Courts, carrying a certified copy of a filing I made 90 minutes ago. Renata's pen stopped tapping. Richard picked up the first document. Mrs. Mack. It is Mack, correct? This is a certified copy of the Gerald R. Mack Irrevocable Holding Trust, established 11 years ago, administered through my firm. This trust holds liquid assets totaling $340,000, including a personal injury settlement, accumulated savings, and 2 parcels of land purchased under a legally separate entity. None of these assets are referenced in any document you or your attorney have prepared tonight, because none of them were discoverable through the channels you used. He let that land. $340,000. $340,000. Sitting in a trust that Renata's lawyer had never seen, never heard of, never imagined existed. Because the retired pipefitter in the flannel shirt wasn't supposed to have a trust. He wasn't supposed to have an attorney in Columbus. He wasn't supposed to be the kind of man who plans 11 years ahead. Richard picked up the second document. This is a copy of the emergency petition I filed this evening with Judge Whitmore's office, requesting a review of tonight's proceedings under Ohio Revised Code 1337.12, which, for the benefit of everyone in this room, governs the abuse of power of attorney instruments. Specifically, the statute addresses situations in which a principal is coerced or pressured into executing a POA through deception, undue influence, or the exploitation of a perceived cognitive decline that has not been medically established. He turned to Renata's lawyer. Counselor, did you perform an independent capacity evaluation before drafting these documents? The lawyer looked at Renata, then at the table, then at his hands. No, he said. Did you meet with Mr. Mack privately, as is standard practice, To confirm that this power of attorney was his voluntary wish? I was told he was agreeable. Told by whom? Silence. Richard nodded slowly. That's what I thought. He picked up the third document. This is a formal complaint I will be filing with the Ohio State Bar Association regarding the ethical conduct of any attorney who drafts a power of attorney instrument without independently verifying the principal's capacity or consent. I'd recommend you consult your own counsel. The lawyer closed his briefcase. He stood up. He looked at Renata, not with loyalty, not with partnership, but with the specific expression of a man who has just realized he was used, and walked out the front door without saying goodbye. The notary followed him 30 seconds later. Richard turned to the room. As for the rest of you, you are guests in Mr. Mack's home. He did not invite you. You arrived without notice in a group of 8, with pre-drafted legal documents and a notary, to pressure a 67-year-old man into signing away his legal autonomy. Dr. Voss is prepared to conduct a cognitive assessment right now. This evening, if anyone in this room would like to formally challenge Mr. Mack's competency. He looked around the table, cousin to cousin, Victor to the 4 strangers. Nobody spoke. I didn't think so. Richard turned to me. Gerald, would you like these people to leave your home? I looked at my dining room table, at the papers still spread across it, at the yellow tabs, at the uncapped pen, at the coffee mug sitting in front of my son's empty chair, because somewhere in the last 5 minutes, Darren had gotten up and moved to the far wall, his back against the doorframe, his arms crossed, his face the color of ash. Yes, I said. I would. They left in 1s and 2s. The cousins first, moving quickly, not looking back. Victor mumbled something about a misunderstanding. The 4 strangers I'd never met walked out like they'd wandered into the wrong courtroom. Renata was last. She stood in my hallway with her blazer buttoned and her purse over her shoulder, and she looked at me with an expression I can only describe as recalibration. She was already calculating, already adjusting, already figuring out how to reframe tonight as something other than what it was. Gerald, I hope you know this was never. Good night, Renata. She left. The court clerk handed me the sealed envelope, a certified copy of the emergency petition, shook my hand, and followed her out. Richard and Dr. Voss stayed for another 40 minutes. We sat at my dining room table, and went through every document, every asset, every protection. Richard assured me that the trust was ironclad, that the petition would be reviewed within 72 hours, and that if Renata or anyone associated with tonight's events attempted contact regarding my finances, he would pursue a restraining order. Dr. Voss conducted a brief cognitive screening right there at the table. She asked me questions for 20 minutes. Memory, reasoning, orientation, judgment. When she finished, she closed her notebook and said, Mr. Mack, you are one of the sharpest 67-year-olds I have ever assessed. And I've been doing this for 19 years. I thanked them both. I walked them to the door. I shook Richard's hand the way my father taught me. Firm, with eye contact, no words necessary. Then I closed the door, turned off the porch light, and stood alone in my hallway. Lily was sitting on the bottom step of the stairs, still in her strawberry pajamas. She had been there the whole time. Grandpa, she said quietly, are you okay? I sat down next to her on that step. She leaned into my arm. Yeah, sweetheart. I'm okay. Did they leave? They left. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I don't want to go home with them tonight. I called her other grandmother, Denise's sister, Carol, and she drove over within 20 minutes. Lily fell asleep on the couch with a blanket I pulled from the hall closet, the same blanket Darren used to sleep under when he was her age. Carol took her gently, carried her to the car, and looked at me on the porch. Gerald, what happened tonight? A lot, I said, but the right thing. If you've been listening for a while and want stories like this to keep coming, it really helps when you hit that like button and subscribe. 97% of people never do, but it's what keeps this whole thing running. So thank you for real. 6 weeks later, Judge Whitmore reviewed the emergency petition within the week. His office opened a formal inquiry into the circumstances of that Tuesday night, and within 60 days, The Franklin County Court issued a protective order barring Renata, and any representative acting on her behalf, from initiating financial or legal proceedings related to my estate without prior judicial approval. The lawyer Renata had brought to my home received a formal reprimand from the Ohio State Bar Association. He wasn't disbarred, but the complaint went on his record. Last I heard, he left his firm and moved to a smaller practice in Youngstown. I don't take pleasure in that, but I don't lose sleep over it, either. Richard Hale restructured the trust with an additional layer of protection. An independent trustee, a retired judge named Harmon Oates, who now serves as a firewall between my assets and anyone who might try this again. The $340,000 remains untouched. The 2 parcels of land, one in Licking County, one just south of Worcester, have appreciated in value. I've designated both in the trust's distribution plan, and the primary beneficiary is Lily. She's 10 now, still draws me pictures, still slides them under the door on Sunday afternoons. Last month she drew one of me at my workbench in the garage, and in the corner she wrote, "Grandpa fixing things." I put it on the refrigerator next to the one from before. The one that says, "Grandpa's house is the best place." My house, still mine, still paid off, still standing on that corner lot on Ridgewood Avenue, same as it has for 39 years. I replaced the water heater for Ray next door, properly this time with a full tank swap instead of the patch job we did that Tuesday. I rebuilt the back porch steps that had been sagging since 2019. I planted tomatoes along the south side of the garage where Denise always said they'd get the best light. She was right. They came in heavy that August. As for Darren, he called me once about 3 months after that night. The conversation lasted 4 minutes. He said he was sorry. He said Renata had pushed it. He said he didn't know about the lawyer, the notary, the cousins, that it had grown beyond what he expected. I listened. I didn't interrupt. When he finished, I said, "Darren, I raised you. I raised you alone, in this house, and I never once let someone else make a decision about your life without asking you first. You sat at my table. You watched. You said nothing." He was quiet for a long time. "I know, Dad. That's the part one can't get past." He didn't call again for 5 months. When he did, it was shorter, simpler. He asked how I was. I told him. He asked about the house. I told him. He didn't mention Renata. I didn't ask. I heard through Carol that things between Darren and Renata had shifted. The Audi was gone, traded for a Honda. They'd moved from the house in Hudson to a rental in Cuyahoga Falls. Renata had left the dental office and was doing something in medical billing from home. I don't know the details, and I didn't go looking for them. I saw Darren at Lily's school play in October. He was sitting 4 rows behind me. When the lights came up after the show, he caught my eye and nodded. I nodded back. We didn't speak, but he showed up. And something about the way he was sitting, alone without Renata in a folding chair with his hands in his lap, reminded me of the boy I used to drive to school every morning. The boy who used to fall asleep in the truck on the way home from baseball practice. The boy who wasn't born hard, just married into it. I don't know if we'll get back to what we were. I don't know if that's possible. Some breaks are clean and some are compound fractures, and you don't know which one you're dealing with until you see whether the bone sets straight. But I leave the door unlocked on Sundays. Same as I always have. I still sit on that porch most evenings. Same chair. Same view. The maples along Ridgewood are turning now. Half gold, half green, and the light in the fall comes through at an angle that makes the whole street look like a painting. Life kept going. That's the thing nobody tells you about the hard moments. They don't stop the world. The morning after that Tuesday night, the garbage truck came at 6:15 like it always does. The mail carrier left 2 bills and a hardware store flyer. A cardinal sat on the fence post and sang like nothing had happened. And nothing had happened. Not to the world. Just to me. Just to the version of my family I thought I still had. Just to the trust one placed in my son's silence, which turned out to be louder than any words Renata ever said. I fixed things for most of my life. Pipes, fittings, boilers, heaters. You find the break. You clean the joint. You solder it back together or you replace the section entirely. But people aren't pipes. You can't always find the break, and even when you do, you can't always fix it. Sometimes the best you can do is stop the leak and protect what's downstream. Lily came over last Sunday. She brought a new drawing, this one of the two of us planting tomatoes. She used 3 different shades of green for the leaves. She's getting good. She sat on the porch step and ate a popsicle and told me about a book she was reading about a girl who lived in a lighthouse. "Grandpa," she said, "do you think I could live in a lighthouse?" "I think you could live anywhere you wanted," I said. She thought about that for a while. "I think I'd still come here on Sundays," she said. "The tomatoes are done for the season. I pulled the last ones yesterday and set them on the windowsill to finish ripening. The garage needs a new coat of paint before winter. The back fence has a loose post I've been meaning to reset. There's always something that needs doing in a house this old. That's not a burden. That's the whole point. The kitchen light is on. Through the window, you can see the refrigerator door. 2 crayon drawings held up by magnets, their colors bright against the white surface. On the counter, a thermos of black coffee, still warm. And on the windowsill, 3 late-season tomatoes turning red in the last of the afternoon sun. If you like this story, join our community by hitting that like button and subscribing for more real, raw, and family-centered stories.